What are we drinking? What is this?
Commonplace. Finca Siete de Julio from Honduras.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. What do you got for us, Johnny? One magical Tinder swipe.
I was working as a waiter on a double, and I went out for my break to check my phone to see if I had any messages, and I had, I think, 16 unread Tinder messages.
That you had not replied to at even once.
Not
and
once,
that,
yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, is how you do it.
Yeah.
And then he got out of work and saw it, and he was like, ha ha ha, adorable. That's how I remember it.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it went down.
Is it, okay, we're filming, and I want to settle the score here. Because I say this all the time. Was I your first match on Tinder?
I think so, yeah.
Downloaded the app.
Yeah, and within 8 hours of downloading the app, I think we had matched.
And that's how we met.
Yeah.
What else you got? Michael was sort of doing this stuff on the side and trying to get a brand started. I would call it that. I would say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I had been working in marketing for larger e-commerce brands forever. And I just kind of was like, I feel like it started by me showing an interest in being like, what is all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first night that we stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning
like, what
texting, I had mentioned what I was doing, and you had shown like a really strong interest in that. And I think you said something like, oh, I really admire that. And I think that right there in that moment, we kind of both felt a little bit of a spark of like, this is interesting, or I'm interested in talking to this person about this. And so then when we would spend time together, the conversation just kind of naturally progressed to that, to the point where like all of a sudden we were collaborating.
I feel like at one point you were trying to like build a GoDaddy website, which is like not okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, that's not okay. Do you want me to help? And you, being totally not toxic at all, were like, yeah, help me.
Yeah.
And then I just started helping you until I was like, I'm gonna have to get paid for this shit.
Yeah, I remember specifically like being huddled over the kitchen table, pulling up this GoDaddy website to show you, and I was like painstakingly trying to decide whether or not to put the PayPal button next to the photograph that I had taken with my Android, and you were just like, I can't stand by and watch this happen. And so I think you encouraged me.
We went to the Apple store,
seek
got you an
professional
iPhone.
help. Yeah.
So we used to get our tools very differently than we get them now. I think that things have changed with how we do that.
Yeah, just based on how available time. We don't have as much time to hunt.
Yes, back in the day it was more romantic, literally, figuratively, all the tivslays.
Yeah, like one of the things that we initially bonded over was an appreciation and love for old things, antiques and the like. And we spent a lot of time digging through antique shops or going to estate sales.
Mm-hmm. So many estate sale lines.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and there was one instance that I can recall where we got in line at like 5 o'clock in the morning to a very well-attended estate sale. And this had advertised that it had a 3-story garage, and so there was like a lot of tool collectors there, and so the competition was stiff to try to find the good tools. And they let everybody in, and I remember taking a couple laps around and not really finding anything. And we were always looking for anvils and vices in these situations. And all of a sudden, over my shoulder, I hear Alyssa say like, hey, isn't this something? And I turn around, and there's this 150-year-old post vise upside down, leaning against the wall.
That was my moment.
And as soon as all of the other tool collector dudes in the room realized what it was, they were so angry that they hadn't found it themselves, and I just felt so proud.
You gonna take that? Yeah, I'm gonna take that.
And
we're gonna take that.
Still use it to this day.
We do, and it's very sexy, which is why it stood out to me, and that's why I had the eye for that, I feel.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling so proud of myself and knowing you well, but like, you know, not like I know you now, and just like all day riding this high of like, I I know how to find the good stuff.
Yeah.
Here we are.
And I think my favorite place to shop for anvils is in the bathroom on Instagram.
But we have, like, I feel like now we have dealers, I guess is what we would call them, people that we know that reach out to us when they get things they know we're interested in. We're sort of like getting tools before we need them, where it used to be like, I literally can't finish what I'm doing until we get this tool, you know?
Yeah.
I think that what inspires me is probably very different from where you're drawing inspiration.
Yeah, I would say.
Where do you, like, how do you get revved up to make something new?
I think the first point of departure is always with the process and the tools and the materials that we use here. Kind of like looking at the different shapes and the forms and textures that we have available in the workshop and trying to figure out ways to do something new or interesting with those. And then kind of taking that and applying it to a traditional format of jewelry or, small objects.
And I'm sort of the exact opposite in that I get really obsessed with tracking down like vintage objects or estate objects or even like museum visits and stuff, and sort of like taking that compounded with what I see is like trending and what is happening with comp, and then saying like, oh, okay, how do we make our version of this? Like, I feel like the Studebaker, when we're designing, I feel like I'm always coming back to like, what's the Studebaker version of this?
Right.
Like, what can our tools accomplish? And then usually that'll like light something up in you, and you'll run down to a tool. And we do so much of our design in material.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times the inspiration for something that we actually finish is the failure of something that we started.
Yeah.
We started to do one thing, and that quite literally inspired us to be like, no, this. When you and I, not fight, we never fight. But when we sort of like push and pull about something, it always lands somewhere pretty good, I think.
Yeah. Constructive discourse.
I think what makes Studebaker different from other brands or sort of like other jewelry end use companies is that we have control of the process, so like nothing really leaves here. We're not designing and then relying on a factory somewhere far away and whatever. We are designing a material, we're producing here, we are working sort of collaboratively, we are doing our own shipping and fulfillment, and I think that all comes back to one of the key motivators for why we started doing this was the idea of craft manufacturing, and like what that means and how that can look. And I feel like when we started this, it was always, especially for my end, because I always worked in much larger scale companies, like I feel like some of my peers were like, oh, good luck doing it that way. How are you going to scale that?
Yeah.
And I feel like you always were chiming in saying like, how do we scale it? This is literally how things were made until super recently. I mean,
Yeah. I think that when we first started this business, the idea was like, how can we, what process can we use where we're just going to use some hand tools and be able to turn these products around in an amount of time that will allow us to compete with things that are made in much more industrial processes and using much more industrial equipment. But yeah, and because we're treating each piece as an individual, the inherent increase in quality of each individual piece is massive. And so from start to finish, one person is making each bracelet, and so it's not an assembly line, it's not a conveyor belt, it's like a person picking up a coil of wire, cutting it to length, hitting it with a hammer, sanding the ends, and making it into a cuff. One of the things that differentiates us from other brands doing similar things is how we own all of these aspects of the process, and from start to finish, everything is happening within these four walls. We can focus more of our energy, more of our resources into the actual production of the piece.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like people invest so much in like design and
Marketing.
packaging and marketing. And as we've grown, I feel like we invest more and more in those things. And of course, like design is important to us, but I think that we put so much focus on production and like how we can make that efficient, but also how we are making it scalable.
Yeah, and also like holding true to like its essence, and that is like this is handmade by a person. We're presenting that at a price point that is approachable, that is not exclusive.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe,